Hightowers, man, I tell you, they are pieces of work. Just busybodies. Episode 6 opens with Rhaenyra on her labor bed, giving birth to another child. Childbirth is hell. But she comes through and gives birth to a little boy. And one of the, would you call them ladies in waiting? I think that's what you call them. Immediately lets her know that the queen, Alicent, has said that she wants to see the child as soon as it's born. And so, in response to this, despite having just given birth, being very weak and whatnot, not even at the point of having passed the afterbirth, it takes place during this conversation, Rhaenyra states that she'll take the baby to Alicent herself. Just absolute pettiness. Layman arrives as she's getting dressed, because it's like, imagine, like, this woman's just literally given birth. And her ladies-in-waiting help her to get her clothes on and whatnot. While getting dressed, she passes the afterbirth and stumbles from her room to go show the baby to Alicent. And it's like, first of all, ma'am, you real presumptuous. Presumptuous isn't the word. You're real petty and a busybody for getting all mixed in and entangled in this stuff. Like, who are you to be demanding that she brings this baby to see you right away? Why don't you just go and see the kid if you're that gung-ho? Right? And then it's like, Layman shows up and he lends her his arm to provide some support because she's just given birth, as they make their way through the castle to go present the baby to Alicent. It's like Viserys isn't even the one that's commanding for the baby to be, presented. Alicent is. But he is there when they arrive in this room or whatever to show the baby. And it's like the vibe is just completely different. Viserys is happy to see the baby because this is yet another grandchild, and he's so excited to, to hold and see and look at the baby and whatnot. The natural reaction that one would expect when a family member, especially your daughter or a close relative, gives birth to a child. Alicent's vibe is completely different, right? She's like just petty and shady and whatnot, and first of all, demanding that the child be brought to her, right? Rather than maybe waiting a few days or even her going to see the child. It feels like she's pulling rank here. While in the presence of the baby, she makes like a snide remark to Layman about the baby not looking like him, right? As if you think back to the previous episodes with the shenanigans with Daemon and Rhaenyra, and then with Alicent finding out about Rhaenyra's entanglement with Sir Christian Cole, she now has like some misgivings, suspicions that these children that Rhaenyra has given birth to are not her husband's children. And it's worth noting that this is now several years into the future, right? Like, they've changed the actresses, as they're no longer the young adults that they were before. Like, these are now grown women. So some time has passed. They both have children. This is, I believe it's Rhaenyra's third child that she's given birth to. And she has children who are older, like, school-age children. Not like white teenagers, but school age. Aegon looks to be like a teenager at least, which would be Viserys and Alicent's first child. When we last saw him, he was like a toddler or something like that, just a few years old. I guess on the one hand, Alicent might be a little bit salty because her father was dismissed based on his allegations about Rhaenyra. And she came to find out that, Rhaenyra was carrying on, just the details weren't quite what she thought they were, or what was suspected and had been gossiped about. And at root of it as well is probably her fear about Aegon's future. With him being now another arguable heir to the throne, she feels threatened by Rhaenyra. And it's like, okay, but I don't think this is the way to go about handling things, because thus far, Rhaenyra hasn't really gone out of her way to create problems for Alicent. It's more like Alicent keeps digging and digging and, poking at Rhaenyra. And it's like, why do you care, ma'am? Well, I guess you would care because each child that Rhaenyra gives birth to further extends the line of succession on her end, right? It's more people with potential claims to the throne. But it's like, you would feel a little bit maybe more sympathetic and maybe side with her if she went about things in a different way. This just comes across as being like nosy and messy. Add to it that with the kids now being older, excluding the baby that Rhaenyra's just given birth to, they're all, they look to be at least like a good 8, 9, 10 years old on up to being teenagers. They have their own relationships with each other, their own interactions. And we see that Aemon, which is one of Viserys and Alicent's younger sons, the kids are taken down to the dragon pits because as part of their Targaryen culture, they're supposed to be dragon riders. And as a result of that, like, dragon eggs are typically placed in a child's crib, and the expectation is that they're going to grow up with the dragon and that dragon's going to become theirs. In some of the later generations, it doesn't quite work out that way, right? Like, the Targaryens kind of just adopt or are adopted by one of the dragons that already exist. And so in this case here, the kids are taken down to the dragon pit, and like the dragon handlers are teaching them about controlling them and how things work and whatnot. One of Rhaenyra's sons gives like a command to one of the younger dragons, which like lights I think it's like a goat or a sheep or something like that on fire and then devours it. And I will say, like, I'm not too into the dragons. I know a lot of other people are, but I just feel like they look really fake. Like they don't look scary. They look a little bit cheesy to me. So it's like, and it's one of the reasons that and just the dragon stuff on a whole, I don't really find that cool. I like the rest of the story. Like, Game of Thrones was the business for me because there was mention of dragons, but they didn't really come into play until later on. And even in Game of Thrones, I thought they were kind of cheesy because I know they're fake and they look like it. But anyway, putting that aside, the kids are being familiarized with the dragons, and we come to find out that Aemon is like one of the only kids that doesn't have a dragon. And kids will be kids. They're kind of jerks. They present him with a pig as his dragon. But kind of incensed, let's say, by this insult, he journeys down into the dragon pits by himself, where one of the larger dragons is housed. I'm not quite sure of, like, I can't keep the dragon names really clear. But I know he's like the dragon. He's like one of the dragons that's been around since like way back when and whatnot. But we can already tell like that's going to end up being his dragon. Never mind that he's like ran off by the dragon. And following this, there's a conversation between him and Alicent where she chastises him for going down into the dragon pit and messing around with this dragon. Because the dragon does like, what would you say, blow fire at him? Not like directly at him, like he doesn't catch on fire or whatever. It's more like the ceiling. He's making a point, making a statement, but not actually threatening him. And Alicent expresses some concern that, he could have gotten hurt and whatnot, but turns out, like he explains that the kids had been taunting him about his lack of a dragon. And it leads to Alicent then going and talking to Viserys about this. You can tell that this is a conversation, or variations of this are conversations that they've had, with her constantly poking at the situation with Rhaenyra and Rhaenyra's kids and whatnot, about the parentage of her children and her kids carrying on and all this kind of stuff and whatnot. And Viserys kind of not really brushes her off, but doesn't like give it energy, right? As he rightfully should, because it's like, yes, that's his wife, that's his daughter as well, these are his grandkids and his kids. It's an impossible situation for him to get into the mix and be unbiased or not upset someone. And really, a lot of this is Alicent. I get her perspective, but it's like her way of going about handling it doesn't seem to be the most effective or efficient means of dealing with this situation. It just seems like she's going to make problems even worse. In complaining to Viserys about Aemon being taunted by the kids, he expresses to her, which is true because we see it, that Aegon was a part of this as well, or likely a part of this as well. And just being the annoying person that she is, she then goes to Aegon to fuss at him as well. She's just on a tour of fussing and nagging throughout this castle. And basically expresses like her displeasure with him. Him not taking things seriously with Rhaenyra and Rhaenyra's kids. You know, joining with them to taunt his younger brother. And she takes this as an opportunity to express to him the threat that Rhaenyra can pose to him in the future. And his response to this is by virtue of him being a threat to her claim to the throne, as he is Viserys' surviving son, right? Like his firstborn son. And his way of looking at it is, well, if it's going to bring a problem, me staking my claim to the throne, I don't really have to. And it's like, that's a valid thing, right? In the past, Rhaenyra expressed similar thoughts as well. And the question is that Alicent is really pushing for this. Like, she's taking up the mantle from her father. And it's like, I understand, you know, Hightower expressed that his concern with trying to, or his reason for trying to get Aegon onto the throne, you know, but in the meantime being heir, is the disruption that Rhaenyra will pose to this society if she becomes queen. And it's like, okay, fair enough, but for the time being, you guys are certainly creating a lot of problems here. And it's like, with Alicent, it's like, ma'am, you married into this family, and you did so in a pretty sneaky and underhanded way. You seem real vested in this royal family link and getting in line to the throne, when it's like, you're not even of the royal family. Like, you just married into it. And everyone involved, like the rest of the people who are actually a part of this family by blood, none of them seem particularly bothered about it. You know, like, they're not up in arms about it, but it's like all of these people on the periphery who are making it into a big deal. Like, left to their own devices, you raise the kids up together and don't have the adults mixing in and sowing discontent and problems. They'll probably work it out amongst themselves in time. But it's like, starting with Hightower kind of poking the bear, and now with Alicent poking the bear, you're gonna kind of force things to where eventually, like, whether she wants to or not, Rhaenyra's gonna have to worry about you being a threat to her and her kids. You know, it's like you're worried about what she might do to you, but it's like, look at what you're doing now. Like, just being an absolute busybody with all of this wheeling and dealing and manipulation and stuff. It's like you're bringing about the situation that you're claiming you're trying to avoid.
Thanks for tuning in. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, go ahead and click the thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and go ahead and share it on social media.